Good morning and welcome to part 2 of cancer, as God has healed, cured cancer. I want to start out today talking about this book right here by Dr. Noyes. The theme of my presentations over the last few presentations have been spiritualism. We focus on the Catholic Church, which rightfully so. But as we read in the Spirit of Prophecy, especially the Great Controversy, spiritualism is going to sweep all within its ranks, including the papacy. So our real foe is spiritualism, because spiritualism is what's going to cause us to believe a lie. 2 Thessalonians, God will send them a strong delusion that they shall believe a lie. Spiritualism is the three unclean frogs like spirits, 3 unclean spirits like frogs, Revelation 16. Spiritualism is the real enemy. That's Satan's greatest masterpiece. And as we get near the end of time, we see that it is in medicine. We see that spiritualism is in the scientific halls, the government, the educational system, the entertainment, the athletic, every arena, spiritual is involved today. And it's not the old ugly spiritualism of the Old Testament. It's very sophisticated. It's designed for the ignorant, and it's designed for those who think they are well educated. But this book is a very good book. In fact, it exposes astrology, acupuncture, iridology, yoga, hypnotism, magnets, tai chi, kwai kong, shiatsu, applied kinesiology, vibrational medicine, transcendental meditation, reflexology, homeopathy, martial arts, aromatherapy, biofeedback, chakras, Ayurvedic medicine, dosing and deviation, secular psychology, 12-step programs, Reiki, essential oils, crystal therapies. My strong advice to you, if you are involved with any one of these, and there are others, I've studied out hot rocks, for example. You go to a massage therapist and they put hot rocks on your back now. So if you're involved in any of these, I would highly recommend getting this book and reading the section on each one of these treatment health modalities, alternative health modalities, to see if you are participating in spiritualism. Because the goal of spiritualism is to turn you away from the Spirit of Prophecy, then the Bible, then God Himself. Here's another book, The Mainstream of New Age. Seventh-day Adventist administrator. He looks at how spiritualism through New Age has infiltrated alternative healthcare practices as well. This gentleman, Dr. Noyes, is a medical doctor for Loma Linda University, and Mr. Vasquez is an administrator for the General Conference. You can also find the book I showed you in part 1, No Healing Medicine. It also talks about the spiritualistic healing modalities that is attacking the Seventh-day Adventist Church. That society believes that they're harmless and that they will help you heal. Only God can heal. So let's do it God's way. So now, back to our topic at hand, cancer. Now, cancer and the treatment modalities of cancer, many of them are spiritualistic. For example, I presented in the Omega of Apostasy, Jesus Christ on the cross. When He said, "I thirst," they gave Him vinegar mixed with gall. And when you look up the original Greek, you will find that they tried to give our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ a narcotic. And in the Desire of Ages, it says that Jesus did not partake of it because he wanted nothing to becloud his mind. That was his only hope. Jesus' mind, his faith, focus on God the Father, was his only hope of winning this battle. Now, Christ is up on the cross. He's about to die. And Satan is still pressing the issue through medicine. Folks, if we're going to be saved at the end, we're only going to be saved because of our faith in Jesus Christ. We want nothing to interfere with our frontal lobe. So we look at these modern day healing modality, these healing practices. We're talking about chemo, we're talking about radiation. Do these things mess with the frontal lobe of your brain? At the end of life, when the medical doctors say, oh, we can do nothing for you, and we want to put you in hospice, hospice is a death sentence. Name one person that has ever got off a hospice. It's designed to ease you very comfortably out the door, or excuse the expression, but to end your life. You see, morphine acts upon the respiratory part of the brain and slowly shuts off the oxygen. Basically, you go to sleep and they're suffocating you to death. That's what morphine is doing. So, how much is that is affecting your frontal lobe? You've been a wonderful Christian 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years. And all of a sudden your loved ones who are compassionate and they're loving and they don't want you to suffer, but they put you on morphine and you doubt. Didn't John the Baptist doubt? So, folks, this is very serious. I'm not telling you to not put your loved ones on morphine. I'm not telling you to put your loved ones on morphine. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I'm not a medical doctor, and I'm not a pharmacist. I'm telling you what those drugs do. So, radiation and cancer. Let's pick up where we left off. Radiation and cancer. A simple chest x-ray treatment is dangerous and causes disease. As far as safe levels of radiation are concerned, apparently no medical textbook in the world says there is a safe level of radiation. Did you get that? No textbook in the world will tell you what's a safe level of radiation. Why? Because different ages, different health conditions, different sexes, so they cannot specifically tell you how much radiation you can safely take. So, you have a dental x-ray today, 2 months from now you have a chest x-ray, you got your microwave in your home, and we wonder why cancer has exploded. In fact, if the truth were allowed to surface, we would be told it is one of the known causes of genetic defects and a contributing factor in the cause of cancer. We would also be told that low-level radiation exposure actually weakens, if not destroys, the immunity of man to resist the disease. So even if the radiation doesn't cause cancer, it's weakening your immune system so you can get COVID or some other disease. So let's look at an example. The GIs, these are the people in the military, during the atomic bomb test in the U.S. were exposed to an average of a little less than 1,000th millirems. As a result, their leukemia rates double that of the national average. Today, the established rate of radiation exposure is 1.25 millirems per quarter. Every 3 months, you should have no more than 1.25. That's the established rate. Is this why the incidence of measles increased 45 times during the year following the 3 Mile Island episode. 3 Mile Island was almost a very terrible nuclear disaster. Considering the simple modern chest x-ray, and yet many doctors think nothing of giving a whole series to a patient, they come in handy for dentists too. Depending on the equipment and duration of a full chest x-ray, you would be exposed to between 30 and 50 milliremes. Now remember, the established rate is 1.25 milliremes per quarter. Here, you might be exposed between 30 and 50 in a day. So, relative doses from radiation sources. Living near a power plant, less than 1 millireme on average. Cosmetic radiation living at sea level, 24 milliremes annually. Let's see here, let's go on up here. A gastrointestinal series, 1,400 milliremes, a single procedure. Radiation, average home, 200 milliremes. Diagnostic radiology, 50 milliremes. So you see, we are exposed to way over the established rate, and I don't know who established it, but it's 1.25 per quarter. And we wonder why the cancer has exploded. That's not including all your smart watches and your TVs, and we're just bombarded by radiation. So the American public is being sold a nasty bill of goods. Dr. James Watson, Nobel Prize winner, while serving on the National Cancer Advisory Board. Folks, cancer is no different today than it was back in 1975. I've read a couple articles recently where they're saying the cancer survival rate is up 5%. Really? Since 1971, only 5%? We need to pay attention to these people who are on the inside of the establishment trying to warn the public. They do so at great cost to themselves. So 60% get radiation. Let's take a look at another scientific study. It's called the Tri-State Leukemia Study. The largest study that has ever been conducted anywhere in the world at the time was a Tri-State Leukemia Study conducted by Dr. Bortel and Dr. Bross of the Roswell Park Memorial Institute. This study involved 30 million people. Such a huge study had never been undertaken. The study produced overwhelming evidence that leukemia does increase when the use of such treatments as X-ray and radiation are used. In other words, the so-called cure for cancer is actually a contributing factor in its cause. What was the reward for this scientific discovery? The National Cancer Institute stopped all grants to that particular research body. You see why the public is not being told the truth? If you go against the narrative, if you go against what's being presented to the public, you no longer receive funding. So, the treatment for cancer and the degenerative diseases is a national scandal. The sooner you learn this, the better off you will be. Dr. Alan Greenberg. So what doesn't the cancer industry want you to know about chemo and radiation? Radiation-induced secondary cancers have exploded in the last 2 decades due to the radiation treatment. So you get radiation for cancer, and you're going to get a secondary cancer. There's a high probability of that. 90% of chemotherapy patients die 10 to 15 years after treatment, and the cause is never attributed to the treatment. More than 50% of all cancer patients suffer significant treatment-related toxicity. Remember I shared with you, toxicity is one of the major factors of nutrients being depleted out of organs. Chemotherapy does not eliminate breast, colon, or lung cancers, yet chemo drugs are still used on these cancers. If you got breast, colon, lung, I would rethink my options. Patients who undergo chemo are 14 times more likely to develop leukemia and 6 times more likely to develop cancer of the bones, joints, soft tissues than those patients who do not undergo chemotherapy. Chemo drugs directly damage DNA. Chemo actually boosts cancer growth. 68% increase in chemo drugs since 2003. A 75% increase in cancer projected by 2030. That's from PreventionDisease.com. Now you notice, it says chemo actually boosts cancer growth. It creates all these other cancers. Dr. Shimke in part 1 told us that. Seventh-day Adventists, Christians, we really need to rethink about being in Babylon and come out of Babylon like we're told to do, commanded to do by God in Revelation 18. Now, let me tell you something real quick, side note. Revelation 14 talks about first, second, third angel's message. But you know what? Revelation 18 starts with the second angel's message. Why? Because when National Sunday Law is passed, that's it for Seventh-day Adventists. All that can be will be shaken out. Revelation 18 is for those who survive the shaking and go forth under God's direction. Remember, Sunday law is passed. The Seventh-day Adventist Church as an organization has either been shut down or they're trying to get you to worship on Sunday now. So Revelation 18, the second and third angel and the fourth angel, that bright angel that lightens the world, that is the faithful who survive the shaking, who go to the world to call people out of Babylon. It's time to study, folks. It's time for you to know what you're supposed to know. So, we'll never cure cancer. This is a researcher. His name is John Johnson. When it comes to the war on cancer, it's time to lower our expectations. A new study suggests, or as the lead author of the study in Nature puts it, cancer is as old as multi-level cellular life on Earth and will probably never be eradicated. German researchers discovered that an ancient organism similar to coral already carried cancer genes that could develop into tumors. Explains the website, Laboratory Equipment. In fact, one of these ancient tumors is similar to ovarian cancer in humans. Posted June 26, 2014. Okay. So, chemotherapy, radiation is not going to cure cancer, folks. It's time to start trusting God. The very first health law is trust in God. So, surgery, radiation therapy, and chemotherapy seldom produce a cure. That's from the American Cancer Society itself. Their Cancer Facts and Figures, 2007. A lot of this information is not being put out today. That's why a lot of this information is dated when they were giving it data, like iatrogenics. They quit giving that information. So, as far as I know, the last time I checked, they have. Untreated patients live longer than treated patients. Now get this. The very first one, Journal of the American Medical Association. Lancet, that is the British English medical journal similar to the Journal of the American Medical Association. The New England Journal of Medicine, very prestigious, right up there with the Journal of the American Medical Association. The Journal of Cancer, JAMA, A Report on Cancer, 1969, Hardin Jones. So these prestigious medical journals have not ever retracted this, but yet cancer has increased. The survival rate has increased by 5%. Well, yeah, you have a lot more people alive on Earth today than they did back in 20 or even 1990. So hopefully there will be a little bit higher survival rate because more people are getting it. We have to think, folks. But here you have these prestigious medical journals telling you untreated patients live longer. Untreated patients live longer than treated patients. So why don't we use God's methods? Why don't we trust God? A poultice, a fever bath, nutrition. You put those 10 doctors together, and that is the #1 health insurance program, medical health care in the world, bar none. So if these folks are telling you you live longer being untreated, well, why don't you let God treat you? Why don't you let the great physician, Jesus, treat you? So, your life may be in jeopardy. Are you safe at the plate? Let's take a look at this. The cure for cancer will not be found under the microscope. It's on the dinner plate. Paul Stitt, medical doctor. So, let's take a look at the dinner plate. Pro and con. Let's start out with the con first. The Cancer Society diet recommendations. Oh, doesn't that look good? Wonderful fruits and vegetables. Now, go up to their website, like I did. Chicken soup. All right. This is what they're recommending now. And we've already been told, meat has a direct correlation to cancer. Meat is a causative factor in cancer, but yet we have meat in the menus because they don't know vegan, they don't know vegetarian. Also, the American Dietetics Association is the one who programs these menus. Crab salad and unclean meat. Okay, chicken, clean, but unclean? And you're really going to trust the American Cancer Society? Shrimp, another unclean food. Tilapia, which is a farm fish, which is worse in nutrition. So, who do you think is sponsors financially the American Cancer Society? How about Tyson, Pizza Hut, KFC, Taco Bell? They're all owned by Yum? Yes, these meat-producing, meat-serving businesses financially support the American Cancer Society, and the American Cancer Society will take their funding, does take their funding, knowing that cancer, that meat is a causative factor in cancer. But let's take a look at all of them. The American Diabetes Association, Dannon, Kraft, Bumblebee. Who else is up there? Velveeta, Oscar Myers, and Lunchables. Let's do Susan G. the Corman Foundation, KFC, Dietz and Watson, Yoplait. The American Heart Association. Look at all this, folks. Look at all that. Unhealthy meat, phosphorus soda pops. Oh my goodness. And you're trusting your life to these people? So, I keep talking about meat. So let's take a look at the problems facing eating meat. Those people, especially Adventists who are still eating meat, let's take a look here. Because there's a serious problem as it relates to cancer. The unhealthy reverence for meat protein drives our past and present medical model. Meat tends to increase the activity of a really important enzyme called mixed function oxidase, it's in the liver. It turns a natural cell into a cancer cell. It impairs the immune system, especially it impairs the natural killer cells, or the NK cells. Those are the ones that once the white cells go out and discovers a pathogen, they call them reinforcements, and the killer cells will come in to kill it, and then the macrophage, or the big eaters, will come in and develop and envelop and destroy and consume, and then take it out to the lymph systems or other parts, other eliminatory systems of the body to be eliminated out of the body. But meat impairs that. Animal protein tends to raise estrogen hormone levels. Women, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, get off the meat. My wife had ovarian cysts, and her medical doctor, bless his heart, not an Adventist, told her to get off of red meat. She was still eating chicken till a girlfriend told her that chicken has more hormones than red meat. So she finally got off of all meat, and to this day, she has no problem with any type of fibroids or ovarian cysts or any of that nature, just by getting off of meat and getting on God's 10 doctors. In turn, it might be associated with breast cancer, the hormones from meat. So, antibiotics. Another reason animal protein causes cancer has to do with digestive enzymes, specifically a lack of them. Now please pay attention closely. Meat protein puts a cover around the cancer cell, which makes the cancer cell invisible to your immune system. Meat protein, folks. That's why they want to give you chemo, because chemo kills everything. So, your body, the pancreas, produces trypsin and chymotrypsin. Now, we're going to get to Dr. Beard, and we're going to talk about the pancreas, and we're going to talk about these two enzymes. So stay with me. Trypsin and chymotrypsin, there it is in the green, the proteins, the enzymes, take away the coating from the cancer cell, making it visible to the immune system. That's why your pancreas is so very important. Your pancreas is the first line of defense against cancer. Your immune system is the second. We're going to talk about the pancreas, and remember, one of the signs of cancer is the trophoblast mechanism being out of order. Okay. Chymotrypsin and trypsin are very important to your health, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later down the road. But I just want to plant that in your mind, so when we get to it, you'll remember it. Those two enzymes dissolves, it takes away, it gets rid of that coating on the cancer cell. So, and animal food can cause a shortage of pancreatic enzymes. So, if you eat meat, your pancreas has to produce enzymes to help dissolve that meat, process that meat, along with the liver, and that's what causes a shortage of those pancreatic enzymes. So we're talking about cancer, we're talking about meat, we're talking about God's 10 doctors, especially Dr. Nutrition. Here, we have pancreatic cancer, two different groups. One group made no dietary changes, 99% dead within 1 year. 99% of the patients dead because they would not get off of meat. They wouldn't get off of dairy, wouldn't get off the sugar. Now, the second group, 52% alive after 1 year who changed to a plant-based whole food diet. All right. This is from the Journal of the American College of Nutrition. All right. That's where that study came from. So, your choice, folks. Are you going to allow your taste buds to control what you eat and think meat doesn't matter when God told his people a long time ago to get off of flesh foods? Pancreatic enzymes not necessary to digest vegetable protein. That's why your pancreas, the trypsin and the chymotrypsin, is so very, very, very important. Meat depletes those enzymes. Supply of enzymes to unmask cancer cells remain plentiful on a fruit and vegetable diet, especially raw. And we have to now look at God's way of healing. I put here alternative cancer treatments, but these aren't alternative. Chemo, radiation are alternatives. They've only been around, what, since the 1900s? So let's take a look at some information that God is sharing. And I have to say this once again. To make plain natural law and urge obedience to it is the work that accompanies the third angel's message. To prepare a people for the coming of the Lord. The moral law, the natural law, they're both God's law. You violate one, you violate the other. It's sin. So, in case of sickness, this is what we're counseled to do. The only hope of better things is in the education of the people and right principles. Those 10 doctors are the right principles. Let physicians teach the people that restorative power is not in drugs, but in nature. Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. You get sick because your body is toxic. Your system's trying to get rid of it through the several eliminatory channels of the human body, but there's more toxins than the body's able to get rid of. Not only that, as that toxin stays in your body, it's depleting nutrients out of the organs. And then on top of that, we're told in the Spirit of Prophecy, Healthful Living, perfect health requires a perfect circulatory system. So now you have inflammation, which causes blockages in the body. So we have to follow God's health plan. And here are these right principles. Dr. Godly Trust, Dr. Attitude, Dr. Proper Rest, Dr. Air, Dr. Sunshine, Dr. Exercise, Dr. Temperance, Dr. Lots of Water, Dr. Nutrition, Dr. Benevolence. And if you saw the presentation on the gospel and the health message, or the health message is a salvation issue, you will know that Dr. Temperance is the link between the gospel and the health message. And Jesus exhibited both of them, the 40-day fast and while hanging on the cross. Temperance. So, let's finish with the counsel. In case of sickness, number one, the cause should be ascertained. Now these are important to follow in order. God does not speak carelessly. Number two, unhealthful conditions should be changed. So, why should you try to heal if you continue to eat and do the things that's causing the problem? You're going to a medical doctor getting a prescription drug to mask the problem. That's all you're doing. Wrong habits corrected. Then nature is to be assisted in her efforts to expel impurities. So after you do the first three, confess your sins, repent of your sins, and get back on God's 10 doctors. It's a lifestyle. Not just for when you're sick. It will keep you from getting sick. It's preventative medicine. Preventative health care. Then, nature is to be assisted in her effort to expel impurities. You make the first 3 changes, then we'll get on the detox, the cleanse and the detox. And give your body the nutrition back it needs so the organs can be healthy, function properly. Number 5, to reestablish right conditions in the system. What is that from? Counsels on Health, page 90, paragraph 1. So, that's the game plan. You want to be healthy without side effects? If you want to heal, you want to be cured, there's the game plan. That's God's plan. So, body chemistry. Right here where it says, number 5, to reestablish right conditions in the system, we have to talk about the body chemistry. 88 different nutrients to make this body healthy. Did you know 96% we are hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen. 96% is what we're made of. The other 4% are the other trace minerals, etc., that make up this body. So, in order to have perfect health, many of you have heard of homeostasis. This is the formula for perfect health. It was created by Dr. Kerry Reams, a Seventh-day Adventist. He believes, if you read his book, that God gave him this formula. This is the formula we use at Original Healing Ministries. This is where we start to get people's body chemistry back in balance. And this is the chart we use to tell you where you're in balance and where you're out of balance. Now, let's take a look at the good diet. We're told in Genesis to eat a whole food, plant-based diet. Nuts, grains, seeds, vegetables. Well, vegetables came in after sin in chapter 3 of Genesis. But fruits, nuts, grains, and seeds. Did you know the diet that God gave us at the beginning is the only diet not linked to any major disease? That's not by accident, folks. You have a wonderful creator God. But we have perverted taste buds. The Industrial Revolution, the invention of the grocery store, the Krogers, the Walmarts, the meat production line has perverted our taste buds. You go back before 1940 and look at the cancer rates. There's a serious correlation. Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree. To you it shall be for meat. That's the command. God allowed man to eat meat after the flood. That was the emergency diet. But man was not expected to continue to eat meat. Now, I know people will say, but Jesus ate fish, and he ate it twice. Yes, he did. Let me deal with that right now. When you take a look at the role of the priest, the priest was required to eat the sin offering in the courtyard, and it was meat in the courtyard and in the holy. Jesus ate fish twice, on earth, the courtyard, and when he went and the second time for his role as priest in the holy. There's no meat eating in the most holy. Jesus Christ, our high priest. So, yes, he ate meat, fish twice, but he was fulfilling his role as high priest. Amen. Now, a person even brought to my attention when Jesus and the 2 angels came and met with Moses. Abraham. And Abraham fixed him a kid. Yes, folks. The kid, the goat, the meat back in Abraham's day did not have the hormones, the pesticides, the vaccines, and all the other junk. They were raised differently out on farmlands and fresh air. The health message wasn't given until 1863. So, you can come up with all the excuses you want. God has said, get off of flesh meat. You will no longer walk with us. So, food sources of cancer-fighting phytochemicals. I'll give you the citation at the end. But these foods have phytochemicals in them that fight cancer. If you want to take a screenshot, I'll leave it up there for a little bit longer. For example, broccoli. They have certain chemicals in them that will stop breast cancer, and it can heal breast cancer. Broccoli. So all these foods are cancer-fighting foods. Some more fruits and vegetables. Now, berries. My cancer patients, the only fruit I allow them to eat are berries. Blueberries, strawberries, blackberries. Why? They're very low in sugar. Number two, well, let me address the sugar. The body runs and functions off of sugar. So you have to have a certain amount of sugar. Fructose and berries do not need insulin to metabolize. In other words, it doesn't need insulin to open the door to the cell to allow the glucose in. Fructose is automatically metabolized. Low on the glycemic index, but more importantly, berries help to heal DNA. And that's why I allow a certain amount of berries to my cancer patients. Cancer protective fruit and vegetables. All right? You want to keep from getting cancer as long as you're doing the other doctors, not just doctor nutrition. You have to do the other 9 doctors as well. They will help protect you from getting cancer. Let's take a look here. September 27, 2005. The health peak of eating your vegetables may lower risk of lung cancer, new research shows. The finding published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, I'm always going to take you back to their source material. This is JAMA. Isn't written in stone. More work needs to check the results, right? Matthew Shabatha, PhD, and colleagues. So here they're telling you that there's great evidence that vegetables may cut lung cancer risk. I need to follow up on the study. So, nutrition. In our opinion, nutrition is the most important single environmental factor affecting health. Dr. Mann of Vanderbilt University and Dr. Stair, Harvard School of Public Health. Here is a very good cancer juice formula. Drink a little less than 2 quarts a day. You can screenshot that right quick if you want. All right, now let's get into some God's health plan, his 10 doctors, and what they can do for you. This is a patient I had when I was in the Cayman Islands. In fact, he was a Seventh-day Adventist evangelist. So he was pretty well known, not just in the Cayman Islands, but throughout the Caribbean, South America. Now, he had liver cancer. I went and visited him in the hospital, and he said he'd want to do chemo and radiation. That's what are you going to do? He said, well, you're always talking about God's health message. I believe it. Let me tell you this story about this gentleman. He was given a neighborhood meeting. And a big, huge yard. These people allowed him to hold a meeting, gospel meetings in their yard. He asked me to come each night and give a little health nugget, as people call it. A little 5-10 minute talk on health. So one of the last nights we were there, I talked about the eyes. How if you put lemon drops in your eyes in the morning, one drop, and a drop of honey in your eyes at night, it will help you with glaucoma, cataracts. And I finished talking. He said, well, I guess if I was going blind, I'd try anything too. Ha, 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 ha. When I sat back down, I looked at my wife. I said, dear, he's making fun of God's health message. He's an evangelist. I said, watch, God's going to do something. Sure enough, I get a call. Dr. Lee, they want to stick a needle in my eye. He said, what should I do? I said, brother, put that lemon drop and honey in your eye, like I advised. He did it. No needle. Whatever problem he was having, I don't remember what it was now, at the time I do, it was gone. That set the stage, even though it humbled and embarrassed him, that set the stage for him to have liver cancer and not do it man's way. Let's take a look here. The previously noted mass in the upper right quadrant is now absent. Compared to prior study, the liver is now noted to demonstrate at least 2 focal errors of subtle heterogenital geneity, primarily in the right lobe, with no gross evidence of the multiple well-defined liver lesions which were previously seen. God's 10 doctors, folks. You have to have an experience with the great physician to be able to have the trust in the great physician, to trust your life to those 10 doctors. So, remember once again, nature is God's physician, the elixir of life. My Life Today, page 135.7. All right, so let's get into some natural cancer treatment protocols that the world has silenced. This is Dr. Beard. I told you about him. We're going to talk about trophoblast now that we talked about all through the presentation. In 1902, John Beard, a professor of embryology at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, authored a paper published in the British medical journal Lancet, in which he stated that there were no discernible difference between highly malignant cancer cells and certain pre-embryonic cells that were quite normal in the early stages of pregnancy. So we have cancer cells and early stage of cancer cells that are quite the same. In technical terms, these normal cells are called tropoblasts. Extensive research had led Professor Beard to the conclusion that cancer and tropoblasts are in fact one and the same. His theory therefore is known as the tropoblast thesis of cancer. Remember, this thesis was published in the British medical journal Lancet, which is the equivalent to the Journal of the American Medical Association here in the United States. Tropoblast cells produce a distinct hormone, CGH, that is readily detected in the urine. Now, what's the need for all this radiation if you can detect cancer in urine? Think about it, folks. Now, when this was discovered, we didn't have all the cancers we have today. So we're going to narrow this down to what type of cancers. If cancer is trophoblast, then cancer cells would secrete the CGH hormone. And indeed, they do. It is also true no other cell is known to produce CGH. A simple urine test can detect the presence of cancer long before it manifests itself as illness or a lump. Then what's the rationale behind surgical biopsies? Adventists, what's the rationale behind double mastectomies? What's the rationale behind doing the things that medical doctors talk us into doing? Now, I'm not even going to try to. Chronic gonadotrophic hormone, CGH, is now today called human chronic gonadotrophic. So they've changed the name, but let's look at this hormone. It is a hormone for the maternal material recognition of pregnancy produced by trophoblast cells that are surrounding a growing embryo, which evidently forms the placenta after implantation. The presence of HCG is detected in some pregnancy tests. Some cancer tumors produce this hormone. Therefore, elevated levels measured when the patient is not pregnant may lead to a diagnosis of cancer, and if high enough, of paraneoplastic syndromes. Okay. The human chronic gonadotrophic can be used as a tumor marker, as in B subunit is secreted by some cancers, including seminoma, chronic carcinoma, tetratoma, with elements of chronocarcinoma, other germ cell tumors, radiatiform mole, and islet cell tumors. For this reason, a positive result in males can be tested for testicular cancer. The normal range for men is between 0.5 MIU/milliliters. Combined with alpha ferroprotein B subset, HCG is an excellent tumor marker for the monitoring of germ cell tumors. Now, different labs use different ratios, so don't hold that 0.0 to 5 as absolute. Whatever the level the lab you're being tested at uses, that's the level that you use. So men, you can find out if you have testicular cancer just by a simple pregnancy test. Now, the reason why I'm showing you all this is, think about it. What stops trophoblast cells at a certain stage of a woman's pregnancy? Interesting. We're going to get to that answer, but let's continue. What about genetics? Genetics in cancer. Epi means above. Genetics is the study of genes and heredity. In other words, the factors that influence gene expression independent of genes themselves. So there is foods. There are those 10 doctors. Remember at part 1 we talked about the oncogenes and the tumor suppressor genes? Well, those genes are turned on and off by the 10 doctors. Epigenetics is how you turn genes on and off without touching them. Unlike COVID, they had to go in and splice, put something in, take something out. Now they have tomatoes that they went in and spliced the genes, took a gene from a fish so the tomato doesn't freeze and put it in the tomato. All sorts of stuff. But epigenetics is what's done to genes without touching the genes. You just influence them from outside factors. For example, Tyne talked about this. Why your DNA isn't your destiny. This was discovered. This was talked about in Time magazine. Epigenetics. The new science, underneath it, the new science of epigenetics reveals how the choices you make can change your genes and those of your children. All right? Time magazine, folks. But you see, there's very little money in epigenetics. The money is in the cancer research. 250 to 500 billion a year. That's why you don't hear about this very much. Let's talk about, I'm going to come back to the trophoblast, but I just want to talk to you about epigenetics, because epigenetics also refers to the trophoblast. So, breast cancer. About 12% of women in the general population will develop breast cancer sometime during their lives. By contrast, according to the most recent estimates, 55 to 65% of women who inherit a harmful BRCA1 mutation and around 45% of women who inherit a harmful BRCA2 mutation will develop breast cancer by the age of 40. So here's a gene that could go malignant on you. There's a 55% chance if it's BRCA1, a 45% chance of BRCA2, but yet they want to do a mastectomy. Your grandmother had BRCA1. Your mother had BRCA1. So let's do a mastectomy. Preventive. Folks, Adventist women, you're not trusting in God if you go down that path. Not after all the information I'm getting ready to share with you. What are BRCA1 and BRCA2? Are human genes that produce tumor suppressor proteins. Remember part 1, those tumor suppressor genes? Now, these proteins help repair damaged DNA and therefore play a role in ensuring the stability of the cell's genetic material. When either of these genes is mutated or altered such that its protein production either is not made or does not function correctly, DNA damage may not be repaired properly. As a result, cells are more likely to develop additional genetic alterations that can lead to cancer. So those two proteins, if they're altered or damaged, will not function properly. So, together BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations account for about 20 to 25% of hereditary breast cancers. Now think about it. Only 20 to 25%. Previous slide I read to you, BRCA1 was 55 to 65%. So now we're talking about 20 to 25% of the 55 to 65%. How low of a percentage is that? And about 5 to 10% of all breast cancers. In addition, mutations in BRCA1 and BRCA2 account for about 15% of ovarian cancers. 15%. Men with BRCA2 mutations, and to a lesser extent BRCA1 mutations, are also at risk, increased risk for breast cancer. Men with harmful BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations have a higher risk of prostate cancer. Men and women with BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations may be at increased risk for pancreatic cancer. Okay, men. Have your doctor ever checked you for BRCA1 or BRCA2? Interesting. Pancreatic cancer. Remember, your pancreas produces trypsin, chymotrypsin, that erase that protein around the cancer cell, making it invisible to your immune system. I'm just trying to help you connect the dots, folks, because they will scare you into their chemo, radiation, and surgery.